Hey, good morning. Time being nearly 9 o'clock, we will open up our agency presentations. I would like to, I'm going to switch the order a little, and we have here because one of our directors has another meeting they must attend to, and I know everybody's time is very important. So, but anyways, I want to welcome you to the capital budget on the Senate side. With that, could I ask Executive Director, is it Simek? I'm sorry. Could you come forward, please?
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning.
Committee members, thank you for bringing us up early this morning. I really appreciate it. I am Stephanie Simek, Director of the Executive Director for New Hampshire Fish and Game, and I have with me Kathy Labonte, who is our Chief of Business Operations.
Thank you.
Kathy Labonte.
Thank you. Appreciate you attending. I have, we have on the under your department, let me just pull it up. We have one item, and I believe the item is, let me just find it. Fish and Game, I'm sorry. On line 40 of the document I'm looking at, a comparable report. It talks about general fund purchase, replace a 410 John Deere backhoe. Could you talk to me about that, the need and what it is? I know what a backhoe is, but.
Yes, sir. Yes, so we have a outdated backhoe currently that is causing concern for various reasons. One is a safety issue. It's a over 30-year piece of equipment. It can no longer be repaired. We've run into many issues over the past few years trying to get parts for it and struggling to get parts to replace on the machine. It's getting to a point where it actually is very concerning for the staff safety. So I'd like for us to be able to replace that unit with a new unit. And then if we can use some of the materials from that first unit to be replacement parts, those parts that are still valuable for the new unit when necessary.
Can you give me some idea, is it being used at one facility, one fish hatchery?
No, it's statewide.
What the purpose of it is?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry about that. Yes, I'll explain. This is a statewide use. It crosses all of our divisions. Primarily our lands division, our facilities division are the larger users of it, but including our fisheries and wildlife divisions, they all use this for a variety of projects and also for maintenance of our facilities. This is a critical piece of equipment for our agency as a whole. They've been, quite frankly, band-aiding the unit for several years now, and I think we're at the point where it does need to be replaced. It was in our original ask for our budgets last year, and we are hopeful that we can get it this year so that we can get this replaced, and it should last us many years beyond that.
Thank you. Senator Waters had a question yesterday, and he's not able to join us on purchasing equipment and whether that is appropriate for a capital budget item. So we'll have that further discussion unless you want to answer that, Kathy.
The cost of $350,000 to come out of our operating budget was really not feasible during this biennial budget phase. That is why we're asking for it to use capital funds. That way we can pay for that $350,000 over the course of a 20-year bond rather than to have to come up with that amount of cash all at once.
Okay, thank you. Senator Gray.
Is the use seasonal?
No, sir, it's year-round.
Thank
If I could go into the conversation a little deeper. I have machinery from 1970 that still works. I have backhoe from 1970 that still is
Yes.
used, and what requires every year is we rebuild a pump, we rebuild cylinders, we do all of those things.
Yes.
You will find that the machinery from that vintage is all reworkable.
Yes.
And sometimes parts aren't always accessible, but in my experience, my backhoe and my bulldozer gets used in my yard. We use excavators, small excavators and skid steers much more often than we do anything else. And I'm having a real trouble coming up with a brand new dinosaur for your use there. And I'd like you to consider that going forward because I have real angst over that item.
I appreciate your concern, sir, and I don't disagree with you. We've been doing that. We use it quite frequently, this machinery. And honestly, we have done the same thing as you just described, where we have replaced parts and this and that. And to be quite frank, you know, our lands chief also feels that this is, you know, a good sturdy piece of equipment. Unfortunately, we are at the point where now we can no longer replace parts or rebuild. And we've even taken it to an outside vendor, and they have suggested that this thing be surplused.
Have you looked at leasing a machine or something different? This is hugely expensive.
It's hugely expensive to
I wanna
lease as well.
emphasize dinosaur. This is not what's typically used out in the field anymore.
Well, I understand what you're saying, sir, but the type of work that we're doing, this is actually a critical piece of equipment for us.
If I could ask you, what is the critical work? Are you digging ditches? Are you cleaning
It's
out
bigger than
containers?
ditches.
What are you doing?
We're creating boat launches, we're building bridges, you know, creating passageways, we're, you know, restructuring habitat. It's larger than just digging ditches, sir. Building roads, yes, thank you. And that's actually a primary one for one of our divisions.
Does anyone else have a question on the backhoe at this time? While I have you here, and that's your only item, I would like to discuss an item that's just a little bit out of reach, but I want to discuss it while we're here because I know it's very important. These people sitting at this table, Public Works, for a number of years on the House side, have worked hand in hand with your department, your predecessors, to make sure that we could bring the fish hatcheries into compliance with an EPA standard that made no sense whatsoever and a huge expense to our state. In doing so, we knew that there was going to be some fish. We didn't have the capacity to at Powder Mill for trout production, and that we would have to cut back somewhere until we could get the new facility up and running. We all understood that. But what we did not know, and I found out till this year, was that part of the fishing derby programs in the towns were working with the department for a number of years that they would pay for X amount of poundage of fish so that they could populate those ponds. So mom and dad and grandfather, when they took their children there, had the pleasure of seeing a fish brought out by the child. And that child then is a pathway to more fishing licenses and hunting licenses. And what I come to find out this year was that the decision was made by the department that you were going to cut that program out, and that you were going to then suggest that those derby people went to outside vendors. I'm not appreciative of that. Everyone I've spoke to is not appreciative of that. And I can tell you that if that was brought to us last year, there would have been a much greater conversation. I just spoke to one of the towns in my district, and I do apologize for this gentleman, but it's aggravating, that the cost to get those fish this year were thousands of dollars more by going to outside vendors. I'm a capitalist, so, you know, someone made money, so that part doesn't upset me. What upsets me is that this department made a decision that I think illy affects future licensees. And if I remember correctly, those licenses are what supports your program. So I would suspect this was not your decision, madam, that this happened before you got there. And I allow you a moment, and then I'll move on.
Well, thank you for your perspective, sir. And honestly, this was my decision based on what I was given as far as projections of fish production for both license holders and the derbies and the tournaments. I can't speak to what was conveyed to you prior to my arrival. Had I been here, I probably would have conveyed all various options of what would have come out of this whole process of developing a new hatchery. I do want to say that this is a temporary pause for this year. We're reassessing as we're going along. In fact, I think I found another avenue for perhaps next year. And I mentioned in the previous discussion that I had with you about this topic, the idea was that we would put it out stating it was for 2 years just so that we could have opportunities to look for other angles. We worked with the vendors, and to be upfront, the Derby hosts are already purchasing fish from vendors. That's how they acquire the fish that they start with. Yes, we provide a match up to a certain amount. We're not providing the match, but we're not shutting down the derbies. We're encouraging them, and we're encouraging our nonprofit partners to support the derbies and help the derby hosts in purchasing additional fish for this year. Again, we'll be reassessing. We're continually reassessing for next year, and we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, Madam.
You're welcome.
Senator Gray.
I want to explain my question from before about the seasonal use, okay? When you look at the Department of Transportation, which we are buying a whole lot of equipment, okay? You know, front-end loaders are used mainly in the wintertime to load sand and salt onto trucks, et cetera. And so the ability to share, when most of the things that you guys cited were things, you know, boat ramps, roads, et cetera, you're not going to do in the dead of winter, okay? And so certainly before I vote on this item, I would certainly like you to come back and assure me that you've talked to transportation, because your winter items may be something that we could buy a much more reasonable, you know, piece of equipment and satisfy those needs. So just a comment from me and what I would, you know, like to get back from you before I vote.
No problem, sir. We can do that. And my understanding is that those conversations had actually occurred even prior to the original request. But I will follow up with you on that and provide you with some additional information.
Thank you. And just a final comment. It costs the town of Ossipee over $2,000 more to do an event that's growing, and so enough said. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I appreciate your time and being here. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for accommodating the schedule.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Madam Treasurer, please. Thank you. Appreciate you coming and respectful of your time.
Of course.
Please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, State Treasurer Monica Mazzapelli. So we began talking about the finances. So that's typically I provide the overview to the committee about our debt affordability, how we, the role that we play at the Treasury. So I provided a presentation, so I'll be brief, again, because you're somewhat familiar with some of these items. But we just, obviously, just like any entity trying to borrow, our credit is very important to try to, that determines the cost of borrowing. So we work with the rating agencies to communicate and convey our strength and our credit profile. So rating agencies, as you've heard from me, review certain components of our economy, you know, our current budget and how we are able to balance. And currently, obviously, there's a slight concern about our fiscal situation being imbalanced. So rating agencies are looking at how we're going to resolve and remediate the current situation. Rating agencies look at the amount of reserves that we have and how we control our expenditures. For example, the anything that increases budgetary pressures, Medicaid, pension, post-employment benefits. Those are items that are looked at in combination with our debt burden. So today we're talking about our debt and our ability to borrow funds. So I'm just mentioning all of that because obviously our ability to maintain a good credit, our practices and our policies related to borrowing is very important as part of that consideration. So there are two ways we review debt affordability. There's we have a statute, RSA 6C, that tells us that there's a limit that we need to calculate every year, and so that law says that the legislature is prohibited from authorizing any additional debt that exceeds the actual and projected debt service if it's more than 10% of unrestricted revenue. So that's a formula we calculate every year. That's essentially 10% of unrestricted revenue from last year. So that allows us to have, obviously there's sufficient capacity right now to borrow. Right now, that formula is not, the numbers are not included in this presentation, but we could essentially borrow an additional $1 billion if we wanted to. But that's obviously, we will never want to be to that point. That would be 10%, and that 10% would be a very aggressive way of borrowing by the state. So the state has a very prudent policy, so that has served the state really well. So that's statutorily, we need to calculate that, and we don't want to get close to that 10%. But the other methodology that we use is our debt affordability study. So our debt affordability study, we prepare that every year, and that essentially calculates debt ratios that allows us to see how we are doing today and how we're going to project those ratios over the next few fiscal years. So that allows us to see where we are and we were going to be. On page 4, sorry, I was mentioning the pages, but on page 4, I'm just showing you how one of the ratios that is looked at the most is the most significant as the debt to revenue ratio. That one is the one that the rating agencies monitor the most. And on page 4, you can see how that ratio has improved over time over the last 10 years. In 2015, we have 8.2% debt to revenue ratio. Today, we have, for 2024, is 3.8%. So a significant increase. And again, that is a combination of revenue outperformance and also our ability to maintain a low debt burden for the state. On page 5 is just an illustration of a chart of, again, how our debt has changed over time. And our debt continues to decrease just because we have issuing more conservative levels of debt. On page 6 is just an illustration of, again, the debt affordability study. And I don't need to get into a lot of details, but if you look at some of those ratios, this allows us to, again, calculate the debt to personal income, debt per capita, and debt service to general fund revenues. And if you look at the right, the last column on the right is the Moody's median. And so we want to get close to, so we are outperforming the Moody's median for debt, personal income, debt to personal income, and debt per capita. And we're just reaching the Moody's median for the debt service to revenue ratio. So again, that's the one we're trying to control, and we're trying to, and so this study, what it does is we include several assumptions. So one of the so this is actually older data. We started preparing this information in the fall when we weren't, the revenues were wasn't clear that the revenues weren't underperforming plan the way they were there today. So but during that study, we also created this assumption. And so this picture that you have here assumes no revenue growth. And we also assuming that we're issuing 60 million of bonds each year. Again, the typical 120 million that we recommend. But what I want to point out is, so in 25, we also included an additional 40 million for the authorization that was granted for the person, so 40 million additional capital appropriation for the person. So when you look at 2025, we included additional 40 million on top of the 60 million. And you can see how the ratios, if you look at the last ratio, debt service to revenue ratio, we moved from 3.8 and we start increasing to 4.4%, and then increases over time. I guess my point of pointing that out is obviously the more debt we issue, that ratio will increase over time. So that's something we want to consider as we discuss. I know I often hear, well, the 120 million has been around for some time, and I agree with you. So if that's going to start changing, obviously it would be helpful to have that conversation. We could certainly create projections that include a little bit of higher authorization, but because of how we have improved over time, I think now this is a good time. It will allow us to perhaps have that conversation and see how much more we want to obviously utilize the additional capacity that we have. But again, this study just shows how we use the 120 million as a base case, and after that, obviously an average of that is reasonable. Again, we'll continue the conversation. So the last page on page 7 is just a few highlights. Right now, we just have additional capacity, but obviously continuing that prudent management of that is important to consider, just because it has served the state well. And again, as you know better than me, additional bond authorizations will create pressure, budgetary pressure. So right now, for example, during this biennium, I knew we were forecasting decreases in revenue. So increase in bond authorization is not something I was ready to recommend. But again, that's obviously a possibility if you decide to stay within those ranges that we provide. One comment I like to make is an additional comment I like to make, and you were having probably that discussion related to the item, the Fish and Game item. One of the things that I just want to remind this committee is the fact that we issue bonds over a year, over a period of 20 years. So funding capital projects is important. So anything that the useful life of the project is not at least 20 years, and it's something you want to just consider as part of your evaluations of what you're approving for capital projects. And lastly, I know the House approved, I think it's 132 million of general fund bonding. I don't have concerns with this amount. Again, it still stays within the range of what we did last year. I think it was 137 last time. 132 million is about that. So it will allow us to still issue between 60 and 65 million in bonds every year if you stay within this amount. Again, if you would like to increase it, I don't think it will, depending on how much the increase will be, if it's a significant increase, obviously will have an impact. But if it's within this range, I would be comfortable with the amount that the House approved. And again, it's your decision if you want to stay within that, obviously that range. And again, future conversations, if you want to increase your ability to bond more, I'll be happy to include those thoughts and considerations in our future projections. And that's all I have for prepared remarks. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The governor's proposal was 143 million. I like you, enjoy the number the House came back at. But the 143 by the governor is that sort of extra money that at that point, although we're not excited to spend any more money, that was a comfortable number.
It's still fine. The 140 million is still reasonable. Again, if all it will do is it will increase, we'll start just adding more to fill that capacity. We do have the capacity, so I think 140 million is reasonable. Again, as you move forward, you continue to have authorizations at this level. I think, again, we just need to consider that as part of the projections. I know there are plans to build a new prison, so all of those thoughts will have to come into consideration as we project future debt service. And it would be very helpful to hear your thoughts as you continue to have these conversations. The rating agencies typically ask, do you have any plans to have additional debt, to issue additional debt? And typically we say no, but if that changes, I would love to know that and communicate that appropriately.
We will have that conversation. I'm also thankful for the conversation you had with me a couple months ago about the TIFIA funding. And unfortunately that we're not able to move in that direction for the benefit of our highways. But I appreciate the open dialogue
Absolutely.
that you and I and this committee have always had.
Thank you.
Questions of the treasurer? Final thing. So we don't bond trucks for the highway. We don't vehicle fleet, that sort of thing. And the backhoe is probably on the fringe of something that should be bonded. Am I understanding you?
Yeah, so I think what I would say, anything that has a useful life of less than 20 years, that's what I would consider I will just think about that
Yep.
twice.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to welcome Department of Administrative Services. All right, Ms. Arlinghouse and team, welcome.
Thank you for having us. We're the Department of Administrative Services, not the entire department. There's 300 or so more of us, but I'm Charlie Arlinghouse. With me is Karen Rantamaki, is the Director of Plant and Property, and Ted Cupper is the Director of Public Works. I have slides, but I'll try to be brief because you have the words on the slides.
Thank you.
We perform two different roles as a department on capital-ish items. One is plant and property, Karen, who manages 96 buildings statewide and manages a significant part of the physical infrastructure of the state. And so that's the maintenance component. That's the asking for money from you component to take care of the buildings of the state. It's a big part of what we do as a department, more than $50 million a year in operating costs, allocated among many departments around the state. The Division of Public Works, Ted Cupper, is the resource part of what we do. Ted is the construction and engineering part of the state. When we build stuff, they design it, help design it, manage the project, and inspect the project as it's ongoing. And that's a significant role we perform. As an agency, we perform the capital budget role. The capital budget requests come to us. I think most of you know how this process works. But starting in the spring, there are hearings in June-ish, depending on when the governor wants to have them. That turns into eventually estimates that Ted's team makes for how much projects really will cost, as opposed to what we think when we first conceive of them. I don't know, if we put a roof on the building, how much? And they do the actual work to get to a decent estimate. That turns into the governor's capital budget they propose. We don't have any say over that. But that's part of what we do, telling agencies what they can and can't ask for and things like that. So Karen's team does a significant analysis of the state buildings. Deferred maintenance of state buildings is probably $1 billion. We don't have a good number because it's too big a number to have a good number for. But they do an analysis and then they do a comprehensive ask based on a lot of people doing a lot of work. Our asks were something like 150 million, not that we thought we were going to get them. But what we ended up getting in the governor's budget was about $15 million. The biggest piece is part 2 of the annex renovation, which is currently kind of a war zone, but a great place to work. I'll just say that, but a bit of a war zone. And then a couple of smaller projects, including the emergency fund, including elevators in the main building, which breaks so constantly that I wonder if we shouldn't be doing too. And sprinkler replacement at DMV, which is a big thing. For historical purposes, I have a comparison for you. The budget came out, and it was the highest proposed capital budget in quite some time, perhaps ever. And I thought, geez, it feels like we're not getting that much compared to what we usually do. So we did an analysis, and lo and behold, I was right. And this is just my way of saying, I don't want $150 million, but I also don't want you to think that we got a lot. We got a significantly smaller percentage than we ever have, despite the capital budget being higher than it ever has been. So we have a graph. The numbers are mine. The putting it together is Karen's. And it just kind of shows you where we are on that. So because of that, Karen is going to ask you for a couple more things. If you happen to decide you don't like something and you have extra money. So I have 3 tranches of items to ask. One is court facilities, one is other, and the third is an IT project. So I'm going to start by saying, oh, go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
Karen Rantamaki, Director of Plant Property.
Welcome.
Thank you. So as Charlie mentioned, we did have a few additional projects for consideration. The Bureau of Court Facilities did not receive any projects in that current version of the capital budget. And I realized that their first priority project was a large new construction courthouse. So I did not put that here in the presentation, but a close second and third project are HVAC projects for Portsmouth and Coos County courthouses, and estimated amount of 4.3 million. And then also for Carroll County and Lebanon Circuit Court, new boilers and controls for 2.85. It's essential that we kind of keep up with the boiler and HVAC stuff, because every cycle we have ones that are starting to come to the end of their useful life. And if we don't, then we're kind of behind on keeping up with those. Some additional projects for our Central Facilities Bureau. I have listed below there, main building and annex brick repointing. So that's just maintaining the outside infrastructure of those very old buildings on our state hospital campus. Windows at Spalding. Over time, we've been picking away at the windows and again, those very old buildings on the hospital campus. A lot of those windows are single pane windows that sometimes don't even shut properly at this point, creating a comfort and efficiency issues. And then, as Charlie mentioned, our elevators are always in need of repair. And so Brown Building would be next on the list after that main building elevator mentioned earlier.
Just to give you a sense of when we do ask for things. The brick repointing, bricks are falling off the building. So we do some patch and repair, but we would like fewer bricks to fall off the building and avoid people's heads. And so we're not asking for I think it would look nice. It's bricks are falling off. Spalding windows, we currently in the winter put plastic over the windows, and Ken Merrifield appreciates it very much, but we would like to get to the windows. The final ask is most of the last 10 capital budgets, we've had money for the sustainability and advancement of the ERP, which is a complicated project. We're going live on the biggest upgrade in 15 years. Current go live is probably February of early 2026. There's a long description on the slide, which I won't go through, but it gives you a sense of, I know for me, when I revisit IT projects, I have to go back and read the description 4 or 5 times because I have to remind myself what it is, because all I know is that it has to do with computers and they're evil. But that's the big picture. If there's anything we can do, any questions we can answer, any questions you have, I'd be happy to ask them or get out of your way.
Senator Gregg.
Is this list in priority order? It doesn't appear to me that it is, so that's why.
No, I would say that Karen's going to hit me. The biggest priority is probably the ERP system, but it's scalable. And then I would say this, after that, I think it is in priority order for her. Although I think they're all fairly significant. So if you picked one that was third instead of second, we wouldn't be, you wouldn't be amiss. Is that
Thank you.
fair?
So Charlie, I lost a word. Did you say that these first two projects, which are HVAC boilers, are scalable? Did you use that word?
No, the ERP project is scalable. The last project, which is my first priority of 5 million, is scalable. If you said 2.6, we would do two, it's not a $5 million, it's a fund we would use to make upgrades so that we could.
I just want to go back a page quickly with your chart. You were under the impression your chart dictates that you didn't get as much money as you should. I was told in ninth grade, be careful of charts, so thank you for your chart, though. Let me just ask you a couple things if I could. I know you folks are busy. So the hospital campus for 25 years or so that I've been around here was a great vision that we were going to fix that property and we were going to move people over there. And do any of these, I know the brick repointing isn't going to get us to that, but is the windows and the brown building going to allow us to move more in? Are those buildings being occupied at this time?
Everything on this list is an occupied building. Main building has a lot of people in it. Spalding is mostly the Department of Labor. Currently, in terms of fixing up the campus, we used ARPA funds for a project to redo the Lonergan building, which used to have education in it, and it's currently empty. That project is getting close to completion. We would then move people into that building. In our ask on the project, we looked at, okay, what would be the next lousiest building that we should upgrade? And it was Johnson. But that has not made it through either the governor's mind or the House's mind.
Okay.
And so that would be next. But, and then the Philbrook building is always in the back of our heads because it's very nice.
Thank you. Yes, Madam President, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize to the committee for,
No need to ever apologize. to the
I got
Senator.
caught up on a phone call that I could not hang up on, let's put it that way. Good morning, Commissioner. You had mentioned Lonergan Hall, and of course, that's where education was, and we had to do asbestos remediation on that building. It's my understanding that it's almost complete. It should be done, I want to say by the end of the summer, I think is what I was told. Are there any plans to move education back in there? And I believe the building that we bought, I think we paid 6.5 million for it. What are we going to do with that? Because we will no longer need that building.
So there are no plans to move education into it at all. The Lonergan will be occupiable probably in the fall. Moving is really expensive and disruptive, but mostly expensive. Disruptive we can handle, but expensive is, moving is just a royal nightmare financially. And so if somebody moves once, we try not to move them again. And education really wanted to be there. The people will remember that we didn't want to buy Hall Street. Frank Edelblum did, and got people to agree to it in the capital budget. It was not actually a request of ours. But they're there, they're happy, it fits them, and to move them would cost millions of dollars, and so I don't want to move them back.
May I follow up?
Certainly.
But then we've just spent millions of dollars renovating a building that we own, and it is now going to be sitting empty.
No, that's not the plan.
What then?
No,
what is
the plan on
Sorry.
any building, we would never want buildings to sit empty that are fixable. When a building becomes empty, what we did is we looked at that, and because they moved out, and they moved everybody out, and we had 2 or 3 separate capital projects that were part of it. Bathroom renovation was one, asbestos remediation was another, elevators was a third. We took that and combined it with ARPA funds and decided to renovate the whole building. When a building is empty, it's so much easier to fix it up than it is when it's occupied. We're renovating the annex right now, half full. And it's just a pain for everybody in there. And I apologize in a meeting for any senators who are gonna have to have their office there. It's gonna be a nightmare for them. Not that much of a nightmare. I mean, I deal with it, but it's a pain. But when it's empty, we renovate it. When we renovate a building, at that point, when the next point comes, let's say when this budget is over, and we know who hasn't been eliminated, for example, we'll then decide who in rented space can be moved into state space. One of our mandates is to move people out of rented space into state-owned space. And so we would do that with Londrigan. And we might do it based on what we were renovating next. Like we were renovating about, let's say for the sake of argument, we were going to do a significant renovation of Spalding, which is nearby. We might then move people in Spalding, happens to be labor, into Londrigan. And so you move around that way. In addition to that, there are 8 or 9 state agencies at least now who are not in state space, they're in leased space. And we would then move them into state space. So Londrigan will be used.
May I follow up,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman? Just a quick question. OPLC is in rented space down here on Eagle
Yep.
Square. Is it your intention to move them into Londrigan to save us money on the lease?
Our intention would be to, if I'm honest, to discuss it with the governor and allow her to help make priorities. My experience in my tenure has been that the governor's office is very interested in who gets to go where. And so we would have a discussion with them about what, but OPLC, if you were to ask me in a vacuum, yeah, they would be first on my list. OPLC, BEA, banking, Council on Developmental Disabilities, the PELRB, probably not DNCR because they have a really good rent where they are. But those are the biggest ones.
Okay, may I follow up?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we get a list of those agencies that are renting space?
Sure.
And what the cost is that we're paying for those
Absolutely.
rents? Because it just seems counterintuitive to me that we have space and why are we renting? We need to be moving people into buildings, and I'm thinking about one Granite Place that we own. Are we going to have available space that we can start moving agencies into? Because we're looking for efficiencies.
So for more than 20 years, this has actually been a significant goal of ours and something that we do every day. When we fix up a building, we move people into it. It's not even a new concept. It predates, I mean, if you go back to when I think it was Representative Callaway who came up with the master plan for the campus in the 90s maybe. And that was actually the goal then, was to start moving people. And if you remember, for example, Walker Building, which we were going to tear down until Kathy Rogers changed herself to a tree. Thank God she did. It's a lovely building now, but insurance then moved into that.
Right.
And Voc Rehab, for example. And so that's a continuing goal. I mean, my goal, Karen maintains a list and it's on our website of all the rented space in the state. And my goal is for one day for that list to have 0 people on it. And like, we don't want Granite Place empty at all. And so the legislature is going to occupy a lot of that, right? During the reno, the HVAC work. When you're gone, somebody else is moving in.
Okay,
We just have to figure out who it is and make sure they get move money in their budget.
okay. Thank you very much.
Senator Gregg.
When you provide the cost, certainly I want the total cost and the cost per square foot on those leases.
Sure.
Any further questions? A comment, Charlie, on OPLC. It's probably some of the worst space I've ever been in. I have need to be there for meetings and so forth. And whoever came up with the idea of putting the bathroom in the hallway and putting a code on it, being the only bathroom, is the most insane idea I've ever seen over there. So if you've ever had to run out there,
I will refer you to the landlord.
thank you. All right, thank you. Department of Health and Human Services, please. Welcome, gentlemen, to Capital Budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, David Wieters, Chief Operating Officer for Department of Health and Human Services.
And good morning, Nathan White, Chief Financial Officer with the Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you.
And to begin, we shared a slide deck with you. I'll also try to be brief, as Commissioner Arlinghouse was. First up, Commissioner Weaver sends her apologies. She did have another meeting right upstairs that she had to attend that leaves her not able to be here today.
Certainly, understandable.
So on the current HB 25, so in front of you, you'll see our slide deck. We were asked to show our capital projects are on HB 25 as well as what we submitted to as an agency to the governor. I'm going to go over the items that are in HB 25 today, and then if you have any questions on the remaining ones, I'll be here for those questions. So starting on slide 3 is essentially an overview of our projects. We have 2 IT projects and 1 facilities project. Those first 2 IT projects, the Medicaid Enterprise Modular Strategy and the Modernized Eligibility Services, are both projects that we work with our federal partners and we get federal funding, large federal funding match. And they're associated with our Medicaid management, and I'll go into a little bit detail on those, and then our integrated eligibility. Both of those were in our budget recommended by the governor. And then the third one was added by the House based off of our discussions of the agency budget to add the Glencliff Home Elevator, which is for warehouse services and moving supplies up and down the building to ensure that we can get those supplies between the floors. So starting on page 4 here, the Medicaid Enterprise Modular Strategy. Over the last 5 years, we've been implementing a re-procurement of that Medicaid Management Information System, which is responsible for just under $2 billion of claims processing and supports 30,000 providers in our state to ensure eligibility for right around 200,000 beneficiaries. This project is a 10-year project. We're at year 5. This additional capital budget is essentially the third capital budget in the installment to allow us to move forward with 3 modules. The first module is third-party liability. And what third-party liability is at a real high level is Medicaid's supposed to be the last payer. So we have to ensure that the commercial insurance and any other insurance providers are billed first. And if they're not, we have a third-party liability system to go through the data analytics and ensure that if we missed it through the normal processes, that we have another opportunity to capture and claw back those funds and recover those funds. The care management or member management module is really focused on ensuring the eligibility of the services for food stamps or SNAP, TANF or cash assistance for needy families, as well as Medicaid and childcare. And it's that module is goaled at enhancing the user experience. In the case of right now, we have a New Hampshire Easy website that some people say is not that easy. And so our goal is to modernize that and allow for self-service functionality, both online as well as in our district offices in a much more streamlined way so that we can maintain eligibility for the people that need it and make proper determinations for the people that do not qualify. And then the third one is to look at a call center management and consolidating our different call centers throughout our department in partnership with the Department of Information Technology to build a scalable solution that other departments could leverage if they needed to. The key there is that right now, if you've ever heard the no wrong door statement, we have no wrong door. However, we have lots of doors. And so sometimes it's really hard for a client to receive services because they'll call Medicaid for Medicaid services. They'll call behavioral health for mental health services. They'll call adult protective services for those. And they won't necessarily, they'll get hopped around. If you've ever been on a call center and where you call a number and they keep saying, oh, I can't help you, but I'll give you another number to call. We're trying to avoid that here at the state. So that project is a total of $33,750,000, of which general fund amount is $3,375,000, and that's a result of getting 90% federal funds. And just in case you had the question, we are in constant contact with our Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and they have been continuing to support us in our 90% federal funds as recently as last week. So we don't have any real concerns as to the ongoing support of the federal match for this program. The next project is Modernize Eligibility Services, which is on slide 5. Sorry, my eyes are not always working as well as they could. And so that one is going through and enhancing on top of that member management that I just reflected, enhancing the underlying system that processes those applications and the forms that are submitted by the clients, and ensuring that digital processing is collecting the information properly, providing it to our staff, our workforce, to ensure that we have both the analytics, the data, and the ability to quickly maintain the eligibility determinations. What we have found over time, especially now with the budget and how we're trying to look at how the budget cuts go through, is how can we use technology to address some of the administrative tasks that could be done by computers as opposed to by a person, and allow our individuals to then focus on the clients and the services that they need. And this will allow for that by going through and having the automated queuing of the information and putting it into a task-based queue, sending it to our workforce so that they can collect the information and address it. I was an electrician a long time ago, and we had 2 different ways of doing it. And this is just an example of why this is important. The way we started is we just got all our work orders and stacked it up, and 5 of us would just go and grab the first 10 or 15, and we'd end up driving all over the county to do the different things. About 3 months later, we got a system that actually went through and said, instead of just randomly grabbing 10 work orders or 15 work orders and driving hundreds of miles, it actually allowed us to take those 10 that are in one area, and we did the distribution by region. That's what this system does for eligibility work. And then on slide 6, the added Glencliff Home elevator, the department submitted a capital request for 8 elevators, of which this was one of them for Glencliff Home. And here at the Glencliff Home, we have an elevator that was installed around 1950, and the controls and mechanicals and hydraulic systems are just outdated to the point that we can't find elevator mechanics that can maintain it anymore. Parts are becoming hard to find, and it's starting to fail more often than not. They are not able to resolve the issue where it does not stop level with each floor. So if you've ever been on an elevator that opens the doors and you have to step out or step up or step down, it's sort of nerve-wracking, and it's also very difficult to get hand trucks that have heavy equipment up or down a step without damaging the supplies. So that's the main issue. And then the other component with it is the fire prevention system that is in the elevator. If we upgrade that, the parts in that to a newer system, we also have to upgrade the fire panel. However, a new elevator could integrate with the current fire panel. I'm not an engineer. I can't tell you why the engineers told us we could upgrade the elevator entirely, like replace it and integrate it, but not just upgrade the parts. But that's what they were indicating in our quotes. So the cost for that solution is $450,000. It's all general funds. And then we do have others. I included them in the slide deck. I would, in the interest of time, if you have questions or if you want me to go through them, we can, but those are the 3 that were in the HB 25 today.
And if I could, those are rated in your preference order.
They are.
Okay. Questions? I just want to make sure, so the Glencliff property, there is an elevator, the house put back in, that's for residential use? Is that what that elevator was for? And this one's for moving supplies?
Thank you for the question. No, the house put in the warehouse elevator. It's not for patient care. It's for providing transport of medical supplies between floors for the workforce to use.
Okay. And that
You
was,
can add that.
what was the number on that? That was,
So, it's item number, I'll pull it up right here. That would be, on HB 25, it's item number 3 on line 30.
oh, I have it, thank you, 47 on my sheet here. So similar cost. Are you in agreement with the House that the one that they put the money in for is the better of the two choices?
Although it's an important elevator, we would have raised the passenger elevators that are constantly failing at New Hampshire Hospital. We have 2 of them there that they fail alternately. And the price to replace those is $336,000. And
I understand that, but on the Glen Cliff property,
Oh.
the elevator that the House put in, which is 450,000, and you're talking about another elevator here, which is another 450. Am I incorrect? Another elevator, or is this all the same elevator?
I can help clarify. So in the agency request, we had submitted approximately $3.45 million request to replace elevators, both one at Glen Cliff, which was approved, as well as a number of elevators at New Hampshire Hospital. And the House selected the one commercial elevator at the Glen Cliff home. And so on page 7, you'll see the line item for the total cost for the remaining elevators.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure, I apologize about that. And then the full detail for the remaining elevators is on page 12 of your presentation. And that provides the additional detail on the elevators at New Hampshire Hospital that are also in need of replacement that Dave was referring to.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to move to the Department of Education, please. I think we're doing well on time.
Good morning, Melissa White, Division Director for Learner Support, Department of Education. I'm here to give an overview of the Career and Technology Education Center's renovation request that we have.
Thank you. Please, I'm sorry, I should have welcomed you. It's nice to have you here today.
Thank you. The department had originally submitted a request to the governor for 2 projects. One project was the Conant Regional 14 Applied Technology Center, and that was at a request at $18.5 million. In addition, we also submitted a request for the Milford Applied Technology Center at about approximately $9.9 million. The governor put into the budget the Conant project at 18.5. The voters then did not approve that project, and Conant has decided to not move forward. At that time, we then went to the House and requested that they please submit and put in our request for the Milford Applied Technology Center at the just under 9.9 million. They provided $1 for that project. So the voters did not approve, but it was by a very, very small percentage. Milford is moving forward. They will take the project to their voters again in early 2026, and they're planning to move forward. And so the department is here to present that project as a capital budget request at about $9,896,050. There are folks here from Milford if there are any questions specific to the project, but the project will provide additional programming in addition to renovating 11 existing programs. Those 11 existing programs are very high leverage, high participation programs that lead to jobs for students right out of high school. They're also going to add in 2 additional programs that are very in high demand right now, and that would be our automotive and our health sciences. These are programs that lead to jobs right out of high school. We have the health sciences program leading to a licensed nursing assistant right out of high school. They can go right into the job force. And so we feel that is a very important investment because these students are able to go out into the workforce into paying jobs that could then lead to further opportunities if they decide to go down the road of becoming a nurse, doctor.
Thank you. Senator Gregg.
As in Somersworth, as in Rochester, as in other places, what we've done is split out the engineering costs, fund that in one budget, and then fund the project in the second budget, you know, in a successive budget. Possibility for them?
So I think if you can go to, and I apologize, I realize I didn't number the pages, but it does break out on the third page, the cost. There's a construction cost for the renovation. There's an equipment cost. That furnishing, the construction cost is at 11.5, the furnishings and equipment at about 2 million, total project cost at 13.5, and then the locals are going to be putting in about that 3.6. So the state request here is the 9.9 approximately. There was in the last biennium no support for the CTE renovation projects, and so that ended up coming out of the Education Trust Fund. I think it's important that out of the capital budget, CTE has been prioritized and funded, and so we would just ask that that continue to be prioritized because it does lead to investment and outcomes for our students and citizens.
I, wholeheartedly agree that it's a priority.
Thank
Okay.
you.
But I also have a budget I have to end up, balanced and not
Understood.
the engineering costs, okay? In many projects may be funded in one budget and moved to the other. I need to know what those engineering costs would be.
Okay.
I think there might be a
Yes.
gentleman behind. Do you want to come forward if you know that number? We're not going to entertain other questions, but I'd like that answer. Just step forward, identify yourself, please.
My name is Lance Whitehead, LaValle Brensinger Architects. I'm the architect that handles the
Come a
engineering.
little closer to the microphone.
Lance Whitehead, LaValle Brensinger Architects. I am the architect that handles the engineers for the Milford
Thank you.
project. Total engineering costs for the project are in the $1.6 million. I would note Rochester was able to fund in phases because they did not have the same SB2 requirements that Milford has. At this time, Milford has not appropriated funds for their 25%. And Milford would be looking to appropriate all of the funds in a single bond vote versus Rochester, who was able to do it at City Council, Senator Gray. They have, to date, funded themselves the study to get them to where they are now. They are hoping to move the project forward in one fell swoop rather than two votes, particularly given the state, this last year they voted on the entirety of the project coupled with a high school project. They'd like to go back to the polls with a reduced scope project for CTE only, all in one vote, as to not do it across 2 years.
I understand a want, and we're going to discuss that. Go ahead.
Again, we're talking whether we can fund it or can't fund it, okay? So there has to be some conversation about this because it is much easier for me to fund $1.6 million in this budget, this capital budget, and then fund the rest in another year. And I think in Rochester's case, what we did is we said it will be a priority. Well, we can't bind them to do anything, but again, we're not going to fund it if we don't think we're going to fund the rest of the construction in future years. So somebody needs to talk about this, and find a way to do it.
Thank you. The CTE program is one of the highest priorities for Public Works over in the House, and it has been here. And I know that 95% of all the people we put through there stay in our state. It's a high priority for us. So the vote, your town voted, they did not appropriate it. I think you've been offered some good suggestion here by Senator Gray. I can tell you that I don't see a path forward at $9.6 million at this point. So if there's some middle ground, I think that would be great. Do you want to continue your presentation?
So I'll just leave at one last point, that the current way that we've been funding CTE renovation across the state for the past 30, 40 years has been 1 to 2 centers at a time every biennium, 2 centers at a time every biennium. We are now, and this is at the very last page, if you flip that one over, second to the last page, that is the renovation schedule. You'll see that we are at the very end. This would be the last probably project that we would be funding. The Advancing CTE committee, that legislative committee that has been meeting for the past year, is coming out with recommendations. And part of those recommendations is really looking at a different approach to CTE renovation, more of a program approach. And so instead of looking at renovating entire centers, we're looking at those high leverage programs that lead to licensure and jobs right out of high school that would be prioritized. So those asks for renovation in the future are going to be much, much smaller and much more focused. So with this being probably the last project that we would be doing and prioritizing in this manner, I would just ask you to reconsider.
Thank you. I'd like to engage in a little conversation. So I really appreciate what the thought process is in working towards programs as opposed to buildings, because there's been a certain disappointment of money that's been used in this program to create new administration offices and everything else in these other projects, which probably weren't our goal. So I love the thought that your group is thinking about programs. And knowing that we are getting behind because towns are saying, no, we're just not funding those multi-million-dollar projects. I have some suggestions I'm going to speak to the committee about of revitalizing some of those programs in your existing 20 schools to give a shot of equipment and so forth in it to get those programs doing better. So I don't know that we're going to get to what you want. I think, speaking to the group behind you, but I think you really need to consider what Senator Gray, and we know the importance of your school. We know what benefit that is for your community and the entire state. It's not been practiced that I'm aware of that we have set aside money, especially when Senator Gray has so many balls in the air trying to take care of so many things. So are there any questions? Yes.
I just want to expand on what you're saying. The thing comes down to the community voted against it. I'm going to commit money in this budget and not fund other projects on a hope that they're going to fund it in the future. I can't do that. But if I am going to do it, I can do it maybe for the engineering costs or something to get you started, to show good faith on the legislature's part. That's the bottom line. I can't reserve that amount of money
I agree.
when the town has already voted against it.
Thank you. All right. That's the difficult position we're in, and I thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the committee?
Thank you, and I think we'll be happy to move forward with anything that you would appropriate. We came here with $1. I might be leaving here with more than $1, so I appreciate that.
We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Department of Environmental Services, please. Mr. Scott, welcome. It's nice to see you again, as always.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee and Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Bob Scott, Department of Environmental Services. I have with me Susan Carlson, our Chief Operating Officer. And being handed out now is a slide overview of our capital budget that I'd like to talk to. So,
Please, and welcome. We're happy to have you here today. Go ahead.
So if we go to jump to slide number 2, which is just a summary of our requests, you'll see we have 5 capital budget requests for the biennium. 3 are for matching funds needed for federal programs. 1 is for ongoing dam repairs, and 1 is for upgrades to the Winnipesaukee River Basin wastewater treatment system. I will note, and you'll see the asterisk there, that the Winnipesaukee River Basin program is self-funded and is bonded separately. So I want to make sure I point that out. So I'll talk to each one in detail. On page 3, we have an indicative list of dams that require repair and reconstruction that fall under this budget. I say indicative because I want to remind the committee that the dams that are put in are, this starts with the budget, the governor's budget over a year ago, or roughly a year ago. And we continuously monitor the status of our 276 dams. So in the context of, for instance, if we have discover extra weeping under a dam or a sinkhole, a swirl hole near a dam, we will reprioritize. So this is our intention, but I just want you to understand that our priorities could change with this monies.
Thank you. Just for my own edification, are these the list that starts on the second page and what we're working on? Are these all requests that are in the capital budget, or these are projects that you're hoping that you could get something into the capital budget?
Everything you're seeing in the slides is in the current capital budget
Thank you.
request.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea on the dams, and obviously I can answer any questions about it, but to give you an idea of the 10 projects, the indicative projects here that require work, 3 are for projects in the Lakeport Dam, so that controls Lake Winnipesaukee. 2 are projects for Murphy Dam in Pittsburgh. That controls the headwaters of the Connecticut River. Just to give you an idea of the importance of some of this work. Again, we're happy to talk in any kind of detail. I do have our head of our dam bureau here also. Going to slide 4, if there's not questions on dams. So we have a match requirement for our clean water, and I've been talking to others recently. If we could have changed the language years ago, we had no control over this. Clean water means water that needs to be cleaned, so it's more like wastewater. And drinking water, state revolving loan fund match. So the biggest issue here is we are in the 5th year of federal fiscal year 26 of supplemental monies from the IRA or Infrastructure Act that greatly increased the amount that we get, which is great for the communities. This is all pass-through money for the communities, but it requires, with that bump up in extra monies, it requires an extra match, which is what you're seeing here. The original part of that program in the early years only required a 10% match. These require now a 20% match. And again, this is the last year of that for the federal fiscal year 26. So that's really what you're seeing here for additional. And again, we have the next slide will address that as well. So these grants, again, they're revolving loan funds with a certain amount of loan forgiveness depending on the community and the entity. So if you go to the next slide, it's more indicative of what I just suggested. So you look under supplemental awards, you'll see in 27 that's zeroed out. So that's demonstrating the additional that we're needing right now in order to receive those extra funds that are needed in the communities. Any questions on that? I can just run through these real quick if you like.
I think we're okay with that.
So the other state match is for Superfund. In this case, we have some monies. Again, there's a 10% match required for sites that don't have a responsible party. In this case, these monies are to match for New Hampshire Plating Company, a facility in Merrimack, New Hampshire. We already have in the existing capital budget funding a little over $570,000. We need another $829,000 in order to meet the match requirement. So that's what you're seeing here for that that Superfund match requirement. And that's again to address contamination issues, chlorinated VOCs, and potentially PFAS and 1,4-dioxane. And you'll see the last bullet there. This match leverages just about 12.6 million in federal funds.
If I could, are you saying you're short 829,000 to leverage 12.6 million?
Yes, again, but that is in the capital budget. So again, I'm not asking, none of the presentation, we're asking for additional monies beyond what's already there. So in the fifth slide, I just want to mention again, this is for the Winnipesaukee River Basin. This is funded, self-funded by the member communities and will be bonded as such. These funds here go to replace force main or for wastewater located in Belmont. So that's one of the member communities. There's also about 1.5 miles of lines need to be done in Guilford and Laconia area. And then at the facility itself in Franklin, we have upgrades needed for solids handling, thickeners, and electrical upgrades that are needed. So that's the total ask there, which is just under $20 million. And with that, I know I breezed through it, but I want to be respectful of your time. We're happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
You haven't presented a wish list here.
Correct. We have not.
You're perfectly happy and you don't even want to make a request while you're here, Commissioner?
We will always accept more funds, but right now we have no wish list for you.
Let me ask a question if I could. On the water projects, the use of acronyms, SR funds, SRF funds. Did we leave anything on the plate that we could have, that if we had more appropriation, we could have leveraged 90% federal funds or 80% federal funds? Did we leave anything on the table?
No, this represents the full amount of offered that we could get. Correct? Yep.
Senator Gray.
In your presentation, on page 3, we have number 1. On page 2, or whatever it is, we go 2 and 4, and then 3, and then 5. Am I to assume that that's priorities? No.
Susan, for the record, Susan Carlson. No, on the first slide, we have them in priority. Dams was one. Because the drinking water SRF and the clean water SRF are essentially the same discussion for both programs. I just combined the number 2 request and the number 4 request for slide presentations.
Okay, so if they're not priorities,
Please.
if they're not priorities, I need to know what your priorities are.
So again, if you look at slide 2, that's the priority listing.
Okay.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like the committee to know that I'm working with Commissioner Scott as well as Assistant Commissioner Kripo to find a way to fund some water projects that were not in the budget.
Thank you. I was waiting to hear that conversation. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. And just for my own education, is that something that might possibly come back into a capital budget?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Department of Transportation.
Mr. Chairman, I have to leave.
Sure.
Meeting at 10:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to talk to you.
Yes. So.
All right. What time will you be free then? Around lunchtime, when we get done here?
Let's see.
I just,
on the phone. I was in the car. It was 45 minutes.
well, I need to be in a meeting Here, my, so I gotta leave by one.
Thank you. My last meeting was probably from 11 to 11:15.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
fantastic. I'll come to you.
Please send me a post it. So I sat down with
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. I'll see you then. Thank you, Commissioner Cass. Nice to have you, and welcome to Senate Capital Budget.
Good morning. Thank you, Senator. For the record, Bill Cass, Commissioner in New Hampshire DOT. With me is Danielle Chandronnet, our Director of Finance, who did all of the work putting this together. I can be very brief and speak very much off the first page summary of our capital budget request. So on page one, and there's a lot of accompanying detail if you want, but to be as brief as possible, our capital budget request is summarized on that first page inside the front cover, and we typically break our capital budget request into the two funding sources, the general fund and the highway fund. So the top half of that page represents our general fund request, and the gray line in the middle represents where the line was drawn. We've identified the needs through the 7 top priorities. The funding line of the gray line below priority 3 is what was funded by the House. So I heard you ask DES about the wish list. We certainly recognize the tightness of the state budget and the general fund, so we are not making that request, but I did want to highlight that those are our kind of wish list ones below the gray line.
Which, I'm sorry, it took me a moment to find my document. So are you referring to unfunded priorities, Pinkham 109, statewide?
Well, I'm starting with the top half of that page,
Yep.
which is the general fund request.
Yep.
So request 1, 2, and 3, the transit match, the FAA match, and the railroad tie replacements. That's what was funded in the House version. Below that line are additional needs were identified, the so-called wish list for reference. But like I said, we recognize the condition of the general fund, and we weren't necessarily requesting that, but just wanted to identify those needs.
This is the room we can have a conversation,
Well,
Commissioner.
I'll kind of highlight that when we talk about where we drew the line
That's
between
fine.
3 and
Thank
4. So
Yep.
just wanted to overview the structure that we had laid out there. Excuse me. So the first priority request is for that estate match for transit vehicles. That roughly $400,000 will match $9.5 million of federal transit funds. That amount represents half of the 15% match. We typically, the state typically provides half the match, and the local transit authority provides the other half of the match. And the vehicle purchases are typically 85% federal, 15% matching funds. The priority number 2 is the state match for FAA projects. Typically, FAA funding that's for our aeronautics and airports, public access airports. Typically, that funding is 90% federal, 10% matching funds. And traditionally, the state and the local airports have always split the match. So this funding amount of $3.6 million represents 5% of the matching funds, and will leverage about $65 million of federal aviation funds. Within the body of the document are a list of projects, both for the transit vehicles and the FAA projects in the next 2 years that match would fund. The third request is for investment in state railroad lines, active state railroad facilities, and replacements of rails and ties. We had originally requested $1.9 million that was not funded in the governor's phase. When we went to the House, we had looked at some older appropriations, and in closing out some older ones from 1999 and 2005, we had repurposed those funds. That's the $825,000 request that's there. We had repurposed those unused prior appropriations to fund a portion of that request for replacement of rail and upgrading some areas of state-owned railroad lines from 85-pound rail to 115-pound rail. So that's, Senator McConkey, when you asked about drawing the line, the need that we had identified was about $1.9 million. That would facilitate about 4 track miles of rail replacement and upgrades. Probably targeted along the Conway Scenic, the Mountain Division, which facilitates Conway Scenic. It's one of our busiest active rail lines. So we will do what we can with what we have with the repurpose money, but certainly if there was consideration for additional funds for those investment in state railroad facilities, that would certainly be welcome.
And that's where the balance of that sits on number 4?
Correct.
And if a portion of that was, you could find a use for a portion of that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Below that, similar to the track replacement, we had also identified replacement of railroad ties. They kind of go hand in hand, the track and the ties. That overall request was it kind of toward along deferred maintenance in state rail facilities. So below that are some investment in abandoned railroad corridor. We have a lot of storm damage and repairs that we do not have the resources to repair along abandoned railroad corridors that tend to be used for recreational and other use.
Is that number 6?
That is number 6, yes.
May I ask you, is that do you view at this point in time you have $600,000 of repair you need, or would this be 600,000? I can't say that, it's capital budget. 600,000 is what you feel is necessary to take care of those issues?
Yes.
Thank
It's
you.
probably a start to address those issues. There's probably more needs than that, but the highest priority ones that we know that we can't get to would be contained in that.
And those funds would be only used for the department's rails, or would that, I know there's been some recent change over to Dancer on trails. Where would this money go?
A lot of the damage that we've identified has been toward the Cheshire line, in the southwest area of the state, as well as I know we do have washouts and damage up in the North Country between Whitefield and Stratford, that area.
So my question is, with the transfer of certain sections of Corridor 19 and others from your department over to Dancer, if there was damage on those lines, had damage, would you be able to use those funds there, or would those funds be exclusively held for rail sections that you were in control of?
I think the latter.
The ones you're in
The
control
latter.
of. Okay,
Would be
thank you
our
for that.
Yeah, Danielle points out it is all state-owned, but yeah.
But
We would tend to focus it on the ones that we have not other resources or other management arrangements
Okay,
with
thank
other
you.
agencies for.
Thank you for
Right.
that. I should just always look to the right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that's the general fund request on that side. I will point out there was one request, and I think we were asked to make sure we spoke to it, North Coast came in, North Coast operates the line on the easterly side of the state from a junction in Rollinsford up to Ospey Aggregates and Route 16. It's a private rail line. They had come in and requested $450,000 of state funds that they would match 50% for continued ongoing improvements to their line. It's a very active freight line. That was approved in the House version of the budget. We work with North Coast in administering that. It's been in the last 4 or 5 capital budget sessions, there have been appropriations for those 50% matching funds to match the railroad funds and investment in that corridor. So that I don't have it in my or our presentation. It was requested by North Coast, but I was asked to speak to that. That would fall under the general fund side as well. So that was a $450,000 request. And the only thing I would point out is, with these, unfunded priorities that we have here on state facilities, it is a tough balance when, we are looking at and we have invested in private freight lines with state funds while state facilities are lacking investment. So
I appreciate your comments. I think historically, the partnership in helping with that rail with the 50% match of the price, I think it's a win. What I'm seeing for Eastern Propane and other movements through there, I'm hopeful that we can continue to.
Oh, yes. Yep. No, I don't disagree. It is certainly from a broader transportation perspective, it certainly is a worthwhile investment and arrangement to continue. I just felt I would be remiss if I didn't point that out. That's all. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Senator Gregg.
On a different subject, not even capital budget,
Let's
just
go there.
the modernization or the paving that's happening out on 202 and 4, because we did some paving there last year. I would like to get a call from somebody explaining why we did the paving last year and then are ripping that same paving back up this year. So again, outside of this, but please have
I
somebody
will.
give me a call. And
You're talking about the long stretch of Route 4.
Yep.
From Northwood, I think, to the
From
east there.
Epsom to Northwood, basically.
Epsom to Northwood. Yeah.
But again, we did a bunch of paving in small strips last year.
Yep.
And then we're ripping it all back. So I do want to get a call on explaining
Certainly.
that, so I can explain it to the constituents.
Very good. And I have an answer for you. So.
So my fellow senator opened up a door, so I'll ask a question here. We have, to my dismay, we have 20% of our capital budgets tied up with software and upgrades and all of that, which means less money that we can spend for leaking roofs, buildings, railroad ties.
Mm-hmm.
There's a project that we've been dealing with on modernization and moving forward housing projects and the ability to do that, and where the developers would participate in costs to move their projects, which will benefit them and our state. If I understand correctly, part of the fiscal note is a large dollar which would modernize is it IT for that project?
I think it was modernizing our software, the permitting software system, and ongoing investment and maintenance of the.
Do you have an idea what that cost is, ballpark?
Do you know, Dave? I know yesterday Wednesday at GNC, we just did a transfer, or through fiscal the week before, about $450,000 a DOIT transfer to facilitate the specific software enhancements that would help enable Senate Bill 153. So that was done in past by
That was done in
moving
past,
some stuff
so
around.
that,
But I
I
think there was
believe
some
it
broader
stands as a
ongoing maintenance.
physical note still on there. So is that physical note going away on that
I'm
project?
gonna ask Dave Rodriguez. to
Please,
speak to
thank
that.
you, thank you.
Good morning, David Rodriguez, Assistant Commissioner, Department of Transportation. We have not edited the fiscal note, but you are exactly right. And we would be happy to testify to that next week when that bill comes up in the House, that we have found a way to fund that initial investment to modify the system to handle this new process
Great.
that you've worked so hard to create.
Thank you for your efforts. Do you have anything else for us? You're leaving me with a smile here, John. Matt.
I'll very briefly go over the second half of our
Please.
budget request. It's the highway fund portion of the capital budgets. What we had anticipated in our budget, about $10 million of capital investment. We had budgeted in our agency budget presentation, debt service allowances to facilitate that. So only coming out of the governor's capital budget, only the top priority was funded. We discussed with the House that we had already anticipated about $10 million of capital budget improvement investment in our debt service in our agency budget. So this House-funded capital budget appropriation for the highway fund totals about $10 million. And it's in those 5 top priorities, which are continued every year. We try to invest and replace 2 to 3 for every biennium, I should say. Try to invest in and replace ongoing salt and sand sheds. Within the department, we have patrol sheds around 85 to 90 facilities. Each patrol shed has at least one salt or sand shed. So, keeping up with those is part of our capital investment. Similarly, in priority number 2, we maintain a lot of facilities with fuel storage. We also maintain the state's fueling system. So keeping up and keeping all of those facilities in compliance, that is an ongoing effort. We've identified in priority number 3, replacing a garage roof on the mechanical services facility in Twin Mountain. And we always, again, with those 85 to 90 patrol shed facilities, we try to at least fund 1 or 2 every biennium to try to keep up with that as best as we can. So those are priorities 4 and 5. I heard your discussions with DES at the beginning. So we've drawn the line. We have the facility in Leominster for design and construction and replacement. That $200,000 in priority number 5 is for the design activities, pre-construction, to look at the next highest priority with the Pinkham shed. And ideally, in the next biennium's budget, we'll find a way to find the construction of that. And then below that line, priorities 7 and 8 are a couple other ongoing or longer-term capital budget needs that we have identified, and we'll continue seeking ways to fund those. So, any questions? That's a very brief summary of the highway fund.
And perhaps we've answered this question. It goes back to former Chairman Campbell's question years back. Why aren't we able to use the odd fund to replace the underground storage tanks? What is preventing us from using the fund that you're paying into every time you buy fuel?
I'll have to get back to you, Senator. I don't remember. I don't want to extemporarize.
That's great. But I would really like a detailed explanation why, because
I'll get you a detail.
that certainly would free up an awful lot of your money.
My sense is and this is a little off the cuff, but I'll verify it afterwards. My sense is we do where we can, but I believe the needs outstrip what would be available
Why-
in the
that-
eligibility
That would be
for
good.
the odd
I'd love to
fund.
hear that, but
Yeah.
I don't believe you folks are using the odd fund. At least that's what I'd heard before. So if you could get
I
back
will.
to me, I would really appreciate that.
Certainly. And I apologize, I don't have it on the.
No, that's, I threw that one out at you. So that's. All right, anything else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I might just back up for a second, it's unrelated to the capital, but to the fiscal note question. If the department were to provide a revised fiscal note worksheet, we would update the fiscal note, but until that happens, we don't update the fiscal note.
So would that be possible to do? And that'll make that hearing much nicer and you won't have to attend. Oh, we'd love to have you, but I'm just saying. Okay.
Since the mics were off, there was discussion of fiscal note and that the department will provide.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Very good. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Mickey, thank you.
Some would say the best for last, so Madam Commissioner, please come forward. And welcome to Capital Budget.
Good morning. Sarah Stewart, Commissioner of the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. I brought with me Jace Worth, who serves as the manager of Franconia Notch State Park, which is where Cannon Mountain is housed and managed. And today we come to you with one priority and one priority only, which is support for the tram. As you all know, we've been talking about the tram for several years in both the House and the Senate and with various governors now. And we held public meetings. We went out to bid. Where we are right now with the capital budget as it's presented to you is $26 million for the tram. And then there's two items which were not top priorities of the agency, but were listed in capital budget requests for just shy of $1 million for Lake Umbagog and 1.5 or so for the Connecticut Lakes headwaters. What we're asking today is to move those two amounts into the tram fund, which gets us close to 28 million, which we can use to move forward with a second round of bidding. We have our own revenue funds to invest in the difference, and I believe we qualify for some LWCF funding to supplement. So by moving the two other items in the DNCR capital budget to the tram allocation would allow us to message to the public that while the tram is probably facing the end of its lifespan at the end of this summer, we have a plan to move forward to replace the tram for New Hampshire.
Thank you. I just want to back up. So you would like to take the monies for the Connecticut Lake Headwaters road repairs, 1.4 million?
Correct.
Was there another one that you need to shift?
There was a Lake Umbagog amount, I believe it's 925.
Between the two?
So those two to move into the tram allocation.
May I ask what your new projected cost of replacing the tramway is?
Sure. So we went out to bid almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And the one solid response we received was for 33 million. The feedback then we received from other potential bidders was we don't want to bid on the entire tram without having an assessment of the integrity of the cement structures, the footings, which was great feedback because if we can have an engineer's assessment that validates the health of those cement footings, the bid would come back looking different. It would be less money. And so we have moved forward with that with the help of DAS. We had several engineers bid, and Jace was part of that process. And we are optimistic that the engineers can get on site this spring.
So before we go there,
Correct.
So wasn't there a number floated out there at $150 million just a few years ago?
It was never $50 million.
Okay, so this, and I'll let you speak. So that would take care of the trim? I'm sorry?
After he's done.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chris wants to say something at some point here.
I just wanted to clarify the commissioner's request because the Umbagog Lake is 50/50 federal general funds. So would the federal funds be able to be used for the tramway?
Not in that scenario.
So you wouldn't get the full $900,000 shifted over. It would only be the 475.
We'll take it. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
So if this project was to be shifted,
Mhm.
your priorities and shifted to do this, are you of the opinion that we're not going to find out after we've got the tram that now the towers need repair and everything else? Is this your engineering? Is this going on concurrently? I get concerned. Go ahead.
Good morning. Yes, the RFQ for structural analysis is presently out. We have received several interested parties, and it's our hope that through that process, cost efficiencies will be found, specifically as it relates to the existing infrastructure. And ultimately, the whole purpose of the exercise is to make the bidding process competitive to pull in another lift manufacturer. We still believe that the project will be between 28 to 30 plus $million. That's informed by estimates done back in 22, 23, from like projects done specifically at J Peak, Roosevelt Island, and then also with the real numbers that we have from the last bid project. So we're doing our best to find those cost efficiencies by way of the structural analysis presently, and using the real numbers that we have. This is why the agency is requested $33 million in total to bridge that gap. We believe with the addition of the money from these projects to the tram, and then the great support through other channels, we will be much closer. But we have to get to the bidding process in order to do that.
And when would construction actually begin, that we put this money in the budget for right now?
It's a really good question. There's essentially three main milestones project features. First of all is structural analysis, which is underway presently. Secondly is design. Third is construction and testing. Right now, it's with how this is setting up, and then if you look at like projects, it looks like construction could begin at some point in 2027 with possible testing completed, ready to run. I project using like comparison, spring of 28.
Okay. Thank you for that. Connecticut Lake Headwaters Road Repair. We made a last capital budget. We made an appropriation because those roads are extremely important to us up there, that right away. So how did your first round, did you find that you ended up with a surplus of money and you had no more needs up there
Oh, no.
2 years ago?
Oh, no. Thank you for that question. We will have needs for a very long time up there. It's 200 miles of logging roads. And so there's always going to be a need. And we have implemented that $1 million using a road committee, which is a subcommittee of the Connecticut Lakes Headwaters Advisory Commission, working with the fee owner of the property to prioritize. And we have maps that show the culverts that we have tackled with that money, the roads that we have regraded and used gravel that exists on the property. So I can double check and send a follow-up notice of the exact dollar amount that we have spent and what is remaining with the plan attached to that. We will always need money for the Connecticut Lakes Headwaters roads to promote the exploration and outdoor recreation there. Please know that we are also currently, the state is currently negotiating with the fee owner, Aurora, and talking about the roads as part of that conversation. So I think there will be more to come in terms of how to allocate funds to maintain the roads.
But it's safe to say if you were to remove $1.4 million there, that there's a need for that money up there that you're not going to be able to fund.
There are road needs throughout our state park and forest system everywhere. And so, prioritizing the Connecticut Lakes, we made that a priority last year. We'll come back at some point, I'm sure, with another priority. I just don't feel that during this conversation point with the fee owners and the state and having the roads conversation as part of that negotiation, it was the right time to make it a priority at this moment, perhaps the next capital budget.
Can you forward information to me on the Lake State Park Marina facilities, what that project entails? And why you think $900,000, we're receiving another $900,000 for that project, why we would sacrifice that?
Thank you. That was priority number 11 in our department priority list, and the Connecticut Lakes was priority number 12. So we had a lot of priorities before those that weren't put into the governor's version. Like a regular one, roofings and repairs. That's one that has been very helpful to our agency as things happen, and we need to react quickly. Again, this year, we've talked internally. The tram is a huge revenue maker for the sustainability of revenue in the park system. That's where we've agreed to focus our priority right now.
Okay. I appreciate your conversation. Senator Gray, do you have a question on that?
No, I don't.
Do you have others? Okay. While I have you here, we've had a conversation of the property, the state library across the street, and a security concern and a need for cameras, even at a minimal level. I've had conversations with administrative. I didn't bring it up when we had the conversation going on here with Administrative Services. Are you in conversation with them? Because my understanding is there might be some lapsed money that we've been alerted to that could be worked on that project.
Thank you. Mindy Atwood, our interim state librarian, I know has been in conversations about that. I can have her follow up with the appropriate person or connect the dots.
And just to clarify, it's not a lapse of a project. I just noted that the department has two projects that are currently on hold. One was to do the climate control at the library, and one is related to the archaeology lab. Those have been on hold since the appropriation in 2019. The thought was extending the title purpose for that to include the security of the library.
Thank you. So our friends at DAS manage the State Library building. I know there has been some activity recently with repainting and figuring out where that leak has been coming from in one of the offices. I don't know if Mr. Cupper is prepared to speak specifically to that, but I can, much like a snapshot for the Connecticut Lakes roads, I can update you on the work that has been done and the plans to fulfill some of that allocation.
Are you and I in agreement that that is a priority and safety over there?
Safety and security would be very important.
I know when we start talking administrative services and hardwiring and everything else, there's a simple solution out there that I would like that in the short term that we could use that. That may even be a level of home security. So
yep, the staff would be very appreciative of that.
I don't want that to fall in the cracks. All right.
Thank you.
So perhaps we could have another conversation next week.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Is there any other questions? All right.
Thank you very much. Happy Arbor Day.
Safety.
It's also Hug a Plumber Day.
All right. I think having seedlings would have been a nice gift today. Next week, okay, thank you.
The extension division of the university is probably a better place to get to see things.
Okay. All right, so do we have any other business before us at this time? We have a meeting scheduled for next Monday, I believe, and I'm hoping we can start honing in. I would like to schedule for the 5th. Was it the 5th? Which was that May 5th? I'd just like to set one that hopefully we can bring this to a close if we can.
Well,
And if we have amendments, bring them in beforehand.
since you have me here and not Deb, that's a hard thing to do,
Yes.
to schedule on my
Perhaps,
schedule.
perhaps you can get back to us, and we're looking at possibly, is it the 5th, Mr. Shea?
It will mean, not going to another committee meeting.
Well,
So,
no, I'm willing to work into your schedule. You just let me know when that is. But I don't want to meet before the 5th, and I know the 15th, your hard deadline.
If you have your aide contact my aide,
Okay, all right,
and I do have to go make that.
all
phone
right,
call.
sounds good, thank you. All right, I will call this public hearing to a close. Thank you. You too.